Welcome to Maritime Pakistan, your gateway to the fascinating world of oceans and the opportunities they present to every one of us. Our goal is to explore the shared heritage of the seas and oceans to achieve global prosperity. Today's discussion explores the book The Sea in History, the Ancient World, and we're going to be focusing on the 12th chapter, which covers the development of maritime exchange back in the Bronze Age Eastern Mediterranean.
So, let's just dive right into a huge question. We tend to think of globalization as, a pretty modern concept, something powered by jets and fiber optic cables. But what if I told you that over 3,300 years ago, the great empires of the ancient world were already running their own complex, deeply interconnected global economy? The real puzzle is, how did they possibly pull that off without any of our technology?
Well, the answer takes us to a fascinating period called the Late Bronze Age, which ran from about 1550 to 1180 BC. And you have to forget any image you might have of isolated little kingdoms. This was a truly vibrant international age. It was a time of incredible diplomacy, constant exchange, and deep connections between the major superpowers of the day.
And this map really gives you a sense of that network. You can see all the big players here: the Egyptians, the Hittites over in Anatolia, the Babylonians in Mesopotamia, and of course, the Mycenaeans in the Aegean. So what was the one thing that linked all of them together? It was the sea. The Mediterranean wasn't some kind of barrier. It was their superhighway. It's how they moved goods, ideas, and culture. Okay, so how do we know all these details about this ancient economy? I mean, for a long time, historians had to rely on old texts and paintings. But then, in 1982, something incredible happened. Divers off the coast of Turkey discovered a real-life time capsule that completely changed our understanding. They found a shipwreck, and today we call it the Uluburun.
Now, this wasn't just any old shipwreck. This was a massive merchant vessel that went down around 1300 BC, right at the peak of this international age. And its cargo was basically a miniature version of the entire Bronze Age world. It was carrying goods that came from at least 7 different cultures, stretching all the way from Nubia in Africa to the shores of Europe.
And just to give you an idea of the sheer scale we're talking about, the ship was carrying 11 tons of metal alone. That's about the weight of 2 full-grown elephants. And the most important cargo was copper and tin. The raw ingredients you need to make bronze, which was the most critical technology of that entire era.
The diversity of what was on board is just staggering, really. We're talking 354 copper ingots from Cyprus, tin that might have come from as far as modern-day Afghanistan, brilliant blue glass ingots from Egypt, and ebony logs from deep in tropical Africa. On top of that, there was ivory, ostrich eggshells, and over 100 massive jars filled with valuable resin for things like perfume. It was, quite literally, a floating warehouse of the ancient world.
And right here, you can see the entire story in just 2 objects. On the left, you got a raw copper ingot, shaped like an oxide to make it easier to carry. This was the workhorse commodity. And on the right, a beautifully decorated pot from Mycenaean Greece. This was the luxury good, the end product. You see, raw materials were shipped across the sea, where skilled artisans would transform them into these amazing treasures for the royal courts.
So, having a ship packed to the gills with treasure is one thing, but what about the actual ship? The technology that made these long, dangerous journeys possible was every bit as impressive as the cargo it was carrying. Take a look at this incredible drawing from an ancient Egyptian tomb. It shows Syrian merchant ships unloading their goods. And if you look closely, you can see the key features. A strong central mast with a big square sail to catch the wind. And do you see that little basket at the very top? That's a crow's nest. That's proof these sailors were crossing open water, way out of sight of the shore, where they'd need a high vantage point to spot land.
And here's where it gets really cool. Based on how the wreck was built, archaeologists are pretty sure the Uluburun was this exact type of ship, what was known as a menace ship. So we can literally match the physical evidence from the bottom of the sea to the pictures drawn by artists 3,300 years ago. It's amazing.
And this kind of maritime know-how wasn't some closely guarded secret either. We've actually found a letter from the Egyptian pharaoh Ramesses II to the Hittite king. In it, he says he's sending over a ship and basically tells the Hittites, hey, make some drawings of this so you can build your own copies. I mean, that is a textbook case of international technology transfer, really not that different from how countries might collaborate on, say, aerospace projects today.
So we've got the goods, and we've got the advanced ships to move them. But who was running this whole show? Because this was not a world of private entrepreneurs and free markets. This huge, complex trading system was controlled from the very top.
Now, paintings like this one are often labeled as showing tribute, right? Conquered people bringing gifts to their powerful new bosses. But that's not the whole story. A lot of these scenes actually show a very formal system of diplomatic gift-giving between equals. A king would send a gift, and he'd expect a gift of equal or even greater value in return. It was all about reciprocity.
And this is the key point. The ruling elites of this era, they all belonged to this kind of exclusive international club. Historians call it a koine. These kings and nobles all shared a common culture, they understood the same diplomatic rules, and they even used a shared language, Akkadian, to write to each other, sort of like how English is used for global business today.
And believe me, they were not shy about complaining if a deal went south. We have this fantastic quote from a letter where the king of Babylon is writing to the Egyptian pharaoh. He's basically saying, "Hey, that big shipment of gold you sent me? I tested it, and it was full of impurities." This just goes to show these weren't just friendly presents. They were high-stakes economic deals that were carefully inspected and fiercely negotiated.
So let's just quickly break the system down. First, ownership was key. The state, the king, the palace owned the ships and the valuable cargo. The traders weren't private merchants, they were high-ranking officials acting on behalf of the king. The whole mechanism wasn't about buying and selling, it was this formal gift exchange. And the entire thing was regulated by what you could call an early form of international law. It was a palace-controlled economy through and through.
Okay, so why does this 3,300-year-old story really matter for us today? Well, because this ancient network actually reveals the fundamental principles of global exchange that are still very much with us.
Just think about it for a second. They needed advanced maritime tech to cross the seas. They had to build essential port infrastructure, things like docks and even temples that could act as landmarks for sailors. They developed international diplomatic rules to keep everything flowing smoothly, and they understood fundamentally that the sea was an engine of prosperity, and that real wealth came from a multi-directional exchange of goods, not just a one-way street. These are the absolute foundations our own global economy is built on.
And that really leaves us with one last big question to think about. If these ancient civilizations, with nothing more than wooden ships, square sails, and the stars to guide them, could build such a sophisticated and far-reaching network of exchange, what does that say about the potential of our own interconnected world today? We hope that you liked today's video. Please share your comments and subscribe to explore other similar opportunities. Post your questions in the comments section for future videos.